Hello, and thanks for checking out this video. My name is Zach, and on this channel, I mostly talk about science fiction and fantasy books, but I also cover a bit of all my interests in the sense of comics, manga, and personal development. But in addition to that, I also consume just media in general. So in this new series slash vlog, I wanted to share what I've been reading or watching the previous weekend, and this being Memorial Day weekend, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I wanted to share this actually surprising number of movies I watched this past week, as well as what I'm currently reading outside of science fiction and fantasy books. So this long weekend was a little bit rainy here in the New York region. And in addition to family obligations and Memorial Day celebrations like the local parade, we also end up still watching a decent number of movies. On a typical weekend, we are pretty much cinephiles, I guess you could say, watching between 3 or 4 a weekend. But with this long extended weekend, actually we watched 8. So this was a chunk of a binge watching, being at home a bit. So to start off, the first movie we watched this weekend, and to briefly talk about without going into a full review, is Nocturnal. And this is a Korean thriller action movie where I got sucked into it because of a really interesting trailer. The trailer has a ton of action. It sets up a kind of interesting premise of whodunit, where you're trying to figure out what's going on, who's the killer, who caused all this chaos. But the movie fell a little flat for me. It was about a 3 and a 5 for me. While the premise is cool and there are some decent action scenes, really all the action was contained in the trailer. So it was a bit of a letdown for the actual film, and not to spoil too much, the characters just didn't hit for me at the end. I feel like, I could have been fleshed out a bit more. So that was a kind of a dud to start the weekend off. But next we watched My Hero Academia, You're Next. This is the latest of the MHA movie series, which unfortunately suffered a bit from anime movie adaptations, where the story is self-contained and really can't affect the larger series as a whole, because even though you're watching this kind of extended side story, everyone has to live and the series has to carry on because the TV series is ongoing. So with that said, the special effects were great. They had some interesting power-ups. It was, of course, always good to see the normal crew from My Hero Academia off on their adventures, and to see them animated by a different studio, I believe it was, because the art was a bit different, even though it's the same characters. But again, sort of a mediocre movie, but good in terms of the My Hero Academia films, which so far, this is a pretty decent one out of the 4. Next up, we watched Cloud, which was another Japanese thriller, but with the also interesting premise, because it's about the world of, not the world, but about an online reseller. And basically the premise is this reseller ends up selling some fake goods and sort of pisses off the wrong people, and they go to try and kind of get revenge on him. And what I liked about this, besides the pacing and the story really keeping me involved, was really summed up in a review by the user Esther on Letterboxd, which quote is, "If you had paused the movie every 5 minutes and asked me to predict what was going to happen next, I would have been wrong literally every single time." And that's how I felt watching this movie, where it just really took a lot of twists and turns. And I could not predict what was happening in the film. I found it engaging, the pacing, and not in a weird way, but everything just escalated and took a turn for the worse or better, however you feel the plot. So it was very interesting. I enjoyed Cloud a lot. Next up, another movie that I enjoyed a lot, which was kind of the big blockbuster of the weekend, and that is Apple TV Plus's Fountain of Youth. So this one was, while maybe not critically a darling, I only rated it a 3.5. I had a lot of fun. It's just one of those big budget popcorn movies. You have John Krasinski of of course, The Office fame, but now he's gone on to be so many other roles. And here he is being the leading man in this world-spanning, globe-trotting adventure, which really echoed a lot of the kind of the classics of the genre. And that's what I loved about it, is how it reminded me of an Indiana Jones adventure or Da Vinci Code or The Mummy. It just had that fun exploration, kind of tomb raiding kind of films as they are off and trying to solve this conspiracy, not conspiracy, but uncover like a secret, like a Da Vinci Code, but in this case, or the Ark of the Covenant. And here we are searching for as the title says, the Fountain of Youth. So just fun and not technically great, but it was a great Saturday night, Friday night popcorn flick. And that's how we watched it. Next up was also another movie from Japan. And this one is a movie that I got tipped off and investigated and learned more about because the second one just came out, but we decided to watch the first one, and that is Touken Ranbu, the movie. This one was another mediocre one for me, only maybe because I had never actually played the game it was based on. So I think the movie is more of kind of one of those fan service for if you're a fan of the game. This has all your favorite characters and you get to see them do their signature moves in the battle. But the premise itself sounded interesting. It's time traveling anthropomorphized swords. So it's kind of two factions warring, where one faction is trying to go back in time to alter the past, and then our main characters are the ancient swords of the past turned into people, and they have to go back and stop the people that are trying to mess with the past. They're kind of like the time cops. And it's set, of course, in ancient Japan, feudal Japan. So you see the big names of Japanese history, these warlords, and our heroes are interacting with them and trying to ensure everything goes according to plans. But maybe because, again, I didn't have the context of the game, that it was sort of a hit or miss on the movie. So it's like a 3 out of 5 for me. Not sure I'm going to watch the second Touken Ranbu, but it was good to at least try something new, I guess. Next up, we watched actually another strong film, maybe another one of the ties for film of the weekend, at least, and that is Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time. So my son has been rewatching, or for the first time for him, rewatching for me, but watching all of the Neon Genesis Evangelions, starting with the original TV series that he watched, and then we've been watching the Rebuild movies. So we finally, this weekend, made it to the fourth and final of the Rebuild movies, Thrice Upon a Time. And this one was, a great way to go out and end the series. It was one of those movies where I probably felt like I only understood the symbolism and what was going on about 50% of the time. So kind of echoes, if you've ever seen End of Evangelion, this is kind of the counterpart in the Rebuilds, where it tells the ending and it kind of wraps everything up, but in a very metaphorical way, I guess you could say sometimes, where there's a lot of symbolism, a lot of stuff's happening. It's kind of not recontextualizing, but putting in context all the previous events of the characters and what makes them who they are. So it was really cool as far as the artwork and the choreography, a lot of really great battles and fights and new designs for all your fan favorite characters. Asuka has some really great moments. Mari has some great moments, but it was all fun and very fitting way to end the series. And just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Thrice Upon a Time. Next up, we shifted a little bit to something that was, again, not so great, and that was the Chinese movie King of Painting. This movie started out strong. One of those movies where the trailer seemed funny. It was a lot of jokes in the trailer. And I liked maybe the first third of the movie. It was a fun time about setting up the world of these painters. And then this wacky aliens come and they get a brush that turns whatever they paint into life. But then towards the second half, it sort of suffers from kind of that mainland Chinese movie syndrome, where they showed displays of wealth, and it becomes just very caricatures of the characters, and just kind of petered out in the second half. So it was an okay movie. King of Painting, fun, but definitely seen way better this year, even for movies from China. And then lastly, the 8th movie we watched this weekend on Monday, Memorial Day, looking for something to kind of cleanse the palate, reading a thread on Reddit about movies that critics didn't like, but users on Reddit enjoyed. And the discussion came up about comedy and how it's so subjective that everyone likes comedy differently, and that a critic will maybe rate a comedy movie like a 30%, but some users on Reddit at least really love the movie. So we gave this movie on Hulu a chance that I had never seen, and it is Grandma's Boy. So I never watched this when it came out, and not to say it didn't age well, but it just didn't hit me. And it's definitely one of those things where I am not the target audience. It kind of has that Happy Madison style humor. Adam Sandler was executive producer when I was watching the credits, so it all sort of made sense. It has that style of humor, and it's very kind of stoner style humor. The premise seemed fun enough about a video game tester living with his parents and the wacky hijinks he gets when he moves in with his grandma. It sounded funny, and there are some funny moments, so it wasn't like a totally wasted film. We definitely finished it, but it wasn't like in laugh out loud, in stitches the whole time. Definitely not in 2025. So that was the 8 movies that we watched this past extended weekend. But now to shift a little bit to, besides what I watched, what I've read lately. And as I mentioned, I'm usually always listening to audiobooks. So before I get into what I'm currently listening to, what I've been reading in those in-between times, like I'll usually read a chapter at dinner. That's manga and comics, American comics. So for American comics on Marvel Unlimited, I'm going through a bit of a slump because I just couldn't find anything that really grabbed my interest. But looking through the old reading guides, I'm currently reading War of the Realms, which is the saga of Thor and that whole Norse mythology. So this was pretty interesting for me at the moment, having recently read Shadow of the Gods, the Bloodsworn trilogy. So I was really, I guess, into Norse mythology. That's why I gave this a shot. And it's been pretty fun so far. I've only read a couple of chapters or a couple of books in the War of the Realms saga, but so far so good. And on the manga front, what I've also, again, sort of in a reading slump in manga, so I love any comics and manga recommendations. After trying a couple isekai, manga and really just not getting into anything at the moment, I found After God by Sumi Eno, and this one, it was really great. So I was looking for that more seinen adult style content, and so far this is great. I'm on volume 3 already, and the first 2 volumes just flew by. The art is amazing. The story is, and not the cliche to say, but out of this world. It's about these gods or creatures that descend to Earth somehow, and they're kind of trying to clean up. There's like if you've read Chainsaw Man, there's like a special section that's trying to contain these threats, and they're gods, but they have like territory. And then we sort of, in a cliche manner, we have a main character who somehow has the powers of the gods. But even now, I just started volume 3 of the manga today. Even by volume 3, we don't really know what happened and why she's like where she is. It's not a typical cliche like Bleach, where he's half Soul Reaper and he gets those powers, or more of the mainstream. We don't really know what's going on with her. We've got like hints so far in volume 2, but in volume 3 I'm just starting, and really loving it. The story is great, the art is great, but I definitely highly recommend After God by Sumi Eno. And then lastly, what I am reading, so on the actual book front, having recently read The Devils by Joe Abercrombie and loved it and just gushed about it. I was reading reviews, and either through the magic of the algorithm on YouTube or Goodreads or Reddit, looking up into The Devils, I came across this book by Benjamin Lyer called The Failures. So it has a very similar, not to say it's similar at all, but a semi-similar premise to The Devils, where you have the title, The Failures, are sort of a Suicide Squad, not so great party, but nowhere near like Suicide Squad. They're not all superheroes, at least yet. There's kind of hints that some of them might be more, and the main leader of The Failures is a bit, enhanced, I guess you could say. But it's not like Suicide Squad, but there is this group of like misfits. But then the great part is this larger world that Benjamin Lyer has built. He has this really interesting world full of, to use anime and manga terms, you have like an isekai kind of character where These two characters so far seem to be from our world and are in this world, and they gain powers like an isekai, but also has a bit of echoes of the Blame, the manga, or if you've watched the anime, I think it's a movie about like a city, because the world that they inhabit, this Wonderlands, doesn't have light. So it seems like it's a self-contained inner world. And yeah, I'm about 65% as of this recording, because this past weekend I wasn't able to do a long bike ride due to family stuff and other events and just rain this weekend. So didn't do my normal 4 or 5 hours of audiobook listening on a long cycle ride. But yeah, it's just so great. I really can't wait to finish this. I've been listening a lot in every other time, doing chores, commuting, everything else, but I've only made 65% so far, but it's really great. I can't wait to talk more about The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. It's just the world. It's a sci-fi fantasy, sort of grimdark, but also fantastical isekai, Blom world building, Suicide Squad. Yeah, it's just multi-genre. Really enjoying The Failures. And lastly, just I guess what's in the queue to come up later, I put the second book of the First Law trilogy because the library had a copy. So as soon as I finish up The Failures, it's on to book 2 of the First Law for more Abercrombie. But that's what I've been watching and reading this past extended Memorial Day weekend. I hope you enjoyed this sort of speed run through what I watched, mini reviews of a couple movies, and where I'm currently at in the books and what's coming up for later reviews on this channel. So thanks for watching and have a great day.